Hey everyone. I'm a little late this year. Things have been busy and such, but at least getting this in before the Oscars, which are very early this year, I think they're on February 9th, I want to be able to get in my own personal top 10 best films of the year list. Now, every year I don't always get to 10 films, because some years are weaker than others, but 2019 was actually pretty strong, where I actually had to whittle some stuff away. Um, so, a couple things I'll get out of the way before I get into the list proper. The first is that I have not seen the movie 1917 as of yet. It didn't open into wide release until January 10th, and then my fiance also wants to see it, but other stuff has been going on, so we haven't had a chance to go see that. So that film may or may not make this list when I eventually see it. I'm not sure when I'm going to have the chance to do that, though. Second is that I'm not going to do a worst films of 2019 list, and there's a couple reasons for that. The first is that because 2019 was a very strong year for movies, I didn't actually see that many bad movies in the theater. I mean, there were movies that were disappointing, or ones I just plain didn't like the Lion King reboot or whatever, but to call it like a horrendous, hideous movie or something is a little hard. So, and honestly, there's no competition. The worst movie of 2019 was Unplanned. There was just far and away the worst. The only other movie that I hated almost as much as Unplanned was Cats. Cats was just fucking awful. I mean, just from a conceptual standpoint, the music is horrible. I mean, my fiance likes the musical, which is why I went to go see that. To go see the movie, because she likes the songs and everything, but I fucking hate the songs. It has no plot, hate the characters, I just had a miserable fucking time at Cats. It's not even a so bad it's good movie. Aside from a couple scenes that are funny, it's mostly just boring. So, the worst movies of the year, Unplanned and Cats. That's it. I don't really have much else to say about those, so I didn't want to make a whole video about that. And plus, I already made a completely unto itself video about Unplanned back in April when that movie came out, so if you're interested in that, go see that. But Unplanned is morally reprehensible. Other stuff, like Gosper No's Climax was a little disappointing, and some other stuff, but not that many bad movies. Plus, I just don't go to see many bad movies on purpose anymore because, I haven't worked at the movie theater since 2018, and back then every movie was free, because I was an employee, so I could go see anything, because why not? And then after I worked at the movie theater, I had MoviePass, and MoviePass didn't have like an extra charge or anything for it. Plus, a lot of that time I was single for a while, so I had the time still. So it was basically just my actual time that got in the way of me seeing that stuff. But now, I'm engaged. I work 5 days a week. I used to have a pretty decent schedule of 4 days on, 3 days off before, and that didn't. So I just don't have as much time to just go see something that I know is actively going to be bad. Plus, I have Alamo Season Pass, and you still, even if you're paying the subscription fee, there's still a service fee of, almost $2 every time you go see a movie, so it still costs a bit extra skin in the game to go see a movie. So I just don't actively go see something I know is going to be bad anymore, as opposed to back when I used to with MoviePass or when I was an employee. So that's why I just haven't seen enough bad movies, and then 2019 was just really good. So wanted to get that out of the way, and also that I have not seen 1917, so if you're asking why is that not on the list, I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's all that good or not. I don't know. I'll try to at least see it before the Oscars, hopefully, but I don't know. It's also, so I'm recording this on MLK Day, which is January 20th or 20-something. Let me check my phone very quickly, because why not? It's exactly January 20th, okay. The last time I went to the movies was on New Year's Eve. I went to go see a screening of Terror Train, which takes place on New Year's Eve at Alamo. And I haven't actually gone to the movies at all in the month of January yet, so I'm kind of going through a bit of withdrawal right now, because nothing is open. I haven't been interested in, Underwater, or The Grudge, or any of that bullshit. And I just haven't gotten to see 1917 because I'm waiting for my fiance. But tonight I'm seeing VHS, which is just a specialty. They only show it one time a day at Alamo from Fantastic Fest. And I'll probably see Bad Boys this week. But yeah, so I'm kind of going through a bit of a movie withdrawal here, so at least I get to talk about movies here. So that's all that stuff. So I do have a full top 10. Some years are kind of weak and I don't come up with a full 10, but this year I have a full top 10. So without further ado, let me go through this list, tell you why they're there, and then try to upload this before I head to my movie. So here we go. Number 10 is going to be Jordan Peele's Us. So I really do like this movie. Obviously, it's on the top 10. The reason it's lower on this list is because there's a lot of ideas in here, and I don't always feel that they all coalesce into a full film. Like, Get Out had a very simple thesis, a very tight execution. Us is a little bit more grandiose. It's he's trying to bite off a bit more than you can chew. But it's still held together. It's got really good production design. It's got really good acting. Lupita Nyong'o, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. She's great in that. It's got tension. I like the whole that, the Get Out was about race, and this movie's a bit more about class, and it uses sort of a visual metaphor. The rules of the universe might not really work on a realistic setting, but, still, very strong movie. I know it came out in February. You've probably already all seen it or whatever. And then when I went to Universal Hollywood Horror Nights this year, they had an Us maze that was really fun to go through. So you got to actually walk through the movie pretty much and everything, and that was done really well. So that helped to sort of boost us, like, oh yeah, I really did like Us, because when a movie is released that early in the year, late February or early March, whenever that movie came out, it has a chance of getting sort of lost in the shuffle, but I was like, oh yeah, Us actually really was good, and it's kind of gotten forgotten around award season because probably it was released so early on, but very good. Number 9 is Dolomite Is My Name. This is a Netflix movie. Now, the great thing about living near an Alamo Drafthouse is that Alamo will play some of the Netflix movies on occasion. So I got to see, like, the Breaking Bad movie, because they had, like, a one-week engagement of that, and a couple other things that will be on this list later. But I got to see Dolomite Is My Name in the theater. And, yes, I'm one of those people who is like, a movie is better in the theater than it is just watching it in your living room and streaming. So I was really happy that I got the experience to just go one afternoon and go see Dolomite Is My Name in a theatrical setting, like a real fucking movie. So this one, it's about Rudy Ramore, the guy he made, Dolomite, Human Tornado, all that stuff. And it's a very much kind of a disaster artist or Ed Wood type movie, and it has the same screenwriters as, Ed Wood and Man on the Moon and People vs. Larry Flint. The two good guy biopic guys. And Eddie Murphy hasn't been this great in years. I don't remember the last time I saw Eddie Murphy in something I actually liked, and keep in mind, I really did not like the movie Dreamgirls, so I'm not even counting that. But he has a lot of just empathy and feels like a kind guy, even though he's delivering some pretty crude and rude jokes and everything. And, I maybe just because I like movies and wish I was making them instead of doing what I'm doing right now, there's movies about people who sort of like pick themselves up and are able to just kind of make a movie, and whether it's good or bad or not, it connects with an audience, and they're just trying their best even though they don't quite know what they're doing. Those kind of movies really ring to me. So this is sort of like, this is to blaxploitation what Ed Wood was to like cheesy 1950s horror movies and sci-fi movies and stuff. And if you liked Ed Wood, you're probably gonna like this. But I really had a good time with it. It's very, very funny, and you really connect with it. And Eddie Murphy is stellar. Number 8, and I'm wearing an appropriate Overlook Hotel shirt for it, is Dr. Sleep. Dr. Sleep is a movie I'm very surprised I liked as much as I did, because Mike Flanagan, the director, he had a difficult task in front of him. He basically was trying to thread the needle between making a movie that was both true to Stephen King's books, The Shining and Dr. Sleep, while also being true to the filmic iconography of the movie The Shining. And if you've read Stephen King's The Shining and seen Kubrick's movie, you know that they're not exactly all that similar, so it's very hard. So what he basically did was he technically made a sequel to the movie version, casting lookalikes for Jack Nicholson, that's the guy from E.T. who played him, and Shelley Duvall, and recreating the set of like the Overlook Hotel and everything. having it take place there. So like what's his name? Duke is his name? I forget. But the chef guy is dead, and all that kind of stuff. So it makes changes to the story to have it fit in continuity, Carl's Manley, in continuity with Kubrick's movie, but it has the emotional thematic ties to the book, where it is more about character and overcoming alcoholism and that sort of thing. So it's a very fine tune, and it would have been very easy for it to not work, but it really does. And Ewan McGregor's really good in this sort of low-key portrayal of Danny Torrance, where he's not going over the top, he's just kind of playing it like a real guy. And I was surprised by how much it worked. I mean, the Overlook stuff and a lot of the Shining stuff only really happens at the very beginning and the very end of the movie, and the rest of it is just sort of living this Dr. Sleep story. It's really just about this guy just trying to come to grips with who his family was and how he grew up and trying to be a better person and reinvent himself almost. And then, of course, you have these like psychic vampire type people who are feeding on people with the shine so that they can continue to live forever and everything. And it always keeps itself firmly rooted in the emotions of what's happening. So it keeps it mimics the Kubrick style toward the end, though the film itself is not shot like a Kubrick film. But it is a lot more true to Stephen King's themes and his messages and his story than to anything in Kubrick. And I think that was probably the best way to go, because no director can be Kubrick. Flanagan's good, but he's not going to be Kubrick. And I think it's a lot harder to try to mimic Kubrick's coldness and his specific shot style than it is to truly bring King's voice to life, while throwing a couple asides for the mainstream audiences who have never read the book but have only seen the movie. But just for the gusto of trying to do that, because that is a very heavy thing to put on yourself, to try to finely drive between those two and not piss off the estate of Kubrick or King or anything, and the movie just holds together and it really works, and it doesn't feel like it's torn between two masters. So really highly enjoyed that film. I was actually very surprised by how much I really liked it. Number 7 is Marriage Story, which I just watched this week, actually. I was a little late to watching this too. This was a Netflix movie that didn't show at my local Alamo, so I did have to wait for streaming, I also just was behind on watching shit. I'm busy. So I cried a few times during Marriage Story. It is a very, very strong drama. It is well directed, but I feel that the direction takes a back seat because you're focused so much on the acting. Adam Driver, Scarlett Johansson are really phenomenal. There's a couple scenes in this movie where the camera just kind of stays on their face on like a medium close-up and just lets them talk. And you just get deeper and deeper into the emotion of these people. And these characters feel like real people. They're not, ciphers on a screenplay or anything like that. Carl's meowing. Hey, girl. They feel like actual living human beings who are acting and making decisions, some mostly bad decisions, but sometimes decisions as if they are real people, and trying to get that sort of genuine feel to it, almost play-like, or theater-like as opposed to filmic. You don't see that a lot in movies. Movies are, of course, taking place on an elevated level of reality. They're not our reality. But this feels like a real story. Like it could almost be a documentary of these people who, they go into this divorce. They're both upset about things. They both have grievances. But then they get bad advice from other people, and that makes things worse for both of them in the long run. Laura Dern, who's probably going to get an Oscar for supporting actress in this. She's also extremely well as the lawyer of Scarlett Johansson's character, but this was sort of an emotional ride. I've actually never seen Kramer versus Kramer, the famous divorce child custody movie, so I can't really compare, but I have heard comparisons between these. But I was very taken with how much I was moved by Marriage Story. And Noah Baumbach, I haven't seen a lot of his work. I saw Greenberg, a movie that I liked, but a lot of people didn't because the main character is wholly unlikable. But this is a very, very good movie. It's very New York. It feels like something like Woody Allen would have made in the 70s before he went all crazy and pedophilic. Um, but very strong film, and definitely worth the accolades it's getting. It's very emotional, very powerful. Number 6, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Fun Tarantino movie. If it's not higher up on this list, it's maybe because it's not as successful with the rewriting history, revenge story wannabe that Inglourious Basterds was. But if you like movies, if you like Hollywood, this is going to be a great movie because it takes you back into that time period, that late 60s, goes into like when washed up American actors were becoming Italian stars and all that stuff. This was a movie that was mostly just a lot of fun, to just drop you into this alternate version of this world and deal with these characters. The fact that it takes Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate and sort of treats her as a human being as opposed to a victim. I know there was a lot of controversy about her not having a lot of actual lines of dialogue, but that scene where she goes to just watch The Wrecking Crew, and you see that she's happy, and she's happy that the audience is enjoying her performance and everything, that's actually a pretty moving scene, because it's like she just wanted to, be this actress and everything. And that the movie sort of rewrites it. I'm not sure if that's a spoiler at this point. I think everyone was expecting the ending to be different for a Tarantino movie version of this, but yeah. And then there's some really great scenes, like when Brad Pitt's character goes to the Spawn Ranch, and you're not sure if the guy who owns it's dead. It's very creepy. It's very almost Hills Have Eyes stuff, where the entire women of the cult are lining the sides, waiting for him to come in and everything. Leo DiCaprio is this washed up alcoholic actor who's who almost reads as bipolar, though the movie doesn't call him that. And him just feeling really great about playing, or trying to feel good about playing the villain on a bunch of these other throwaway TV shows and everything before he becomes the star in Italy. There's a lot of really fun stuff in this. The Bruce Lee scene, which I know Bruce Lee's estate or his family doesn't like, but it's still a really fun movie scene. The did he or didn't he with Brad Pitt and killing his first wife character. There's a lot in this movie, but it's, Alamo was showing it at in 35, so I got to see this movie in 35 mil projected, and it was a really fun experience. This is it's weird to think that this movie that overlaps with the Manson murders is almost a feel-good movie, especially with the characters going through what they're going through in the movie. But this was just a really fun movie. I mean, coming from, I think, was Tarantino's last movie was Hateful Eight, which was a movie I liked. A lot of people didn't, but I liked it. But that was that also had some fun stuff in it, but it was a bit more oddly dark in tone than this was. So this was just sort of kind of light and happening, and just a real fun movie lovers movie. And yeah, it's definitely. I wouldn't rank it in the higher echelon of Tarantino stuff. It's on sort of on the high middle end of it. But yeah, definitely a very good movie. I mean, after waiting from Hateful Eight for his next film, yeah, great. Number 5 is Uncut Gems. Sorely robbed of of any Oscar glory, So I went to go see this on Christmas Day because it's a very very happy, fun-filled family movie, right? So, Uncut Gems is one of those movies that it's shot in a very gritty fashion. It looks like it's almost 16 mil. I don't know what film stock they used for it. And it takes you into this world that almost feels like it's a movie from the 1970s, though it obviously takes place in modern times, where it's just a character study. It just follows this one character, played by Adam Sandler, in probably his best performance. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Reign Over Me, like Punch Drunk Love, not as big a fan of Funny People, and I didn't like Spanglish at all. But this is probably hands down his best performance, because I forgot I was watching Adam Sandler when I'm watching it. But you're just following this character as he makes the worst decisions possible at every given moment. And the fact that they cast Adam Sandler makes you not hate this guy completely. You're almost still rooting for him. He has a sliver of likability that comes from it being cast as Adam Sandler, despite the fact that nothing you see about this character makes him likable on an empirical, objective level. But this is a tense movie. You're just following this guy, he's making bad decisions. You're like, why are you doing that? And you're just like there's almost like a weird like skill Rex kind of score to it as this is all going down, and you're just wondering like, this guy, it's not gonna end up good for this guy. You hope he's not gonna be too bad, but you know he's not gonna end up well. So, but this is a really tense, gritty film, and Adam Sandler is amazing in it. I think he's literally in every scene of the movie, almost. Like, if he's not, then he's in almost every scene of the movie. And you're you just want to like shake him and be like, stop pawning things and betting things. And then the final sequence where you have these guys trapped in this vestibule and he's watching this basketball game as it goes through, that's probably the most tense moment of any movie in 2019. This was a really strong film, and you know, I walked out of it, ended up kind of like, you know what, I really kind of love this movie. Is The Irishman. This was another Netflix movie that ended up showing at my local Alamo. 3.5 hours, and I went to go see it at like a 10 o'clock show because they were originally only showing it at like 7 o'clock every day, and then I guess that sold out all the time. So I went to see a late show. Actually, it may have been 10 or 11. It may have been even later at night that I went to see this 3.5 hour movie. But I was very happy that I got to see this in the theater. I think one of the biggest shames about this Netflix thing is that The Irishman was not seen in theaters by most of the people who saw it, because this is right up there with like high-level Scorsese. I was actually surprised by how much I liked this movie. I thought maybe the digital de-aging would be distracting, or that I would just feel that Scorsese was just sort of going through the motions of stuff he's already been through before. But this is a really, really good movie. Great movie, really. And I wasn't expecting how funny the movie would be. The movie has a lot of humor in it. And I like that it goes through a lot of history I'm interested in, so like Cuba, the labor movement, all of this stuff that a lefty like me would be interested in. And it was great to see. Joe Pesci has been kind of in semi-retirement for a while, so it was great to see Joe Pesci play like almost a more laid-back character and everything, and then Al Pacino just going full Al Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa. This is Al Pacino playing Al Pacino's Jimmy Hoffa, not the real Jimmy Hoffa. But this was really, really great movie, and what I really liked about this movie is that the length of the film really lets you get into the relationship of these characters and how they interact, because Robert De Niro's character is sort of torn between two worlds. He's torn between being best friends and liking Jimmy Hoffa, and being torn between, you know, the Italian mafia that he was allowed into because of this like steak thing he was doing earlier. And so you see a man who is pulled in two different directions, and he's not quite sure what the right thing to do is based on loyalty. And ultimately the movie is about morality in this life, because there's other mafia movies you can claim that they glamorize the mafia. The Godfather, certainly. Goodfellas to a lesser extent, because the bad things do happen to Henry Hill. But this is one of the first movies where it's really about sort of aging in that, where the one aging survivor is like, I did all this, like I killed my best friend, and what's it for? I'm alone my family hates me, and I'm alone in a retirement home. Well, why did I do all these bad decisions, all these immoral things that I thought were the thing to do at the time, and what was it all for? Why did I do this? It's sort of the whole thing, like I did bad things and it was all for nothing and I wasted my life kind of thing. So, which is why, of The Irishman's 3.5 hours, the first 3 hours of that are solid. And it's the last half an hour that feels almost like it's tacked on, but you also need that half hour to get what the message and the point of the film is, which is about this sort of morality and aging thing, and sort of looking back on regret and like this was all for nothing kind of shit, where all the mafiosos are all like in prison and old and they don't matter anymore kind of thing, and it's like, well, all of these machinations and all this Machiavellian scheming, what the fuck was the point, you know? And a lot has been made about Anna Paquin not having lines, but thematically that makes sense. It's because this movie's told mostly from Frank's point of view, and he wasn't listening to her at all. He wasn't paying attention to any of his wife or his daughters or what they were doing. He was all focused on all this other shit. But yeah, the movie sort of kind of ends when, spoiler alert, Jimmy Hoffa dies. And then after that, the remainder of the movie is kind of spinning its wheels, but you still need the spin for the message. So it's a bit weirdly structured in that way, but Scorsese can do what he wants because he's Scorsese. So, but I was very happy that I got to see this in the theater. I don't know if they ever show like revival showings of it or something, or if they have specialty screenings of it down the road. Definitely see it in the theater if you've only watched it on streaming. But a very, very strong film, and I was very surprised by how good it ended up turning out after everything that was going on with it. So highly, highly recommend. Great film. Number 3, Midsommar, Ari Aster's folk cult movie. This movie came out in the summer. I think it came out in July. I think I saw it around July 4th. Saw it on the same day I saw Stuber, oddly enough. Weird back-to-back double feature. I like this even better than Hereditary. Hereditary is a very good movie, but I think Midsommar is actually even more excellent. And definitely the best horror film I saw. A couple of good horror films I didn't see. Like I like The Lighthouse. I didn't think it was good enough to make this list. But strong year for horror as well. Haunt, which went direct to Shudder, also very good. But Midsommar is a dramatic breakup movie with a Scandinavian cult. And it does a great job of making tension happen in broad daylight. As far as direction goes, this is probably the most well-directed film of the year. Just there's like hidden faces and things. There's like a lot of really brutal shots. There's a lot of brutal emotion in there. Midsommar is just... What I loved about Midsommar is that you go into the movie kind of knowing it's about a cult, if you've watched the advertising and everything. But I love something that a lot of people don't seem to be getting, and I don't understand why, which is that the cult in the movie are not the villains. The cult are the good guys, and the friends of Florence Pugh, her boyfriend or friends, are the bad guys. They are the Western imperialist influencers coming into their world and attempting to take their stuff or appropriate them for their own uses, their own theses and stuff, and then they're punished. And then this group, but the one who is not trying to abuse them is the one who is accepted into their fold. And a lot of people didn't necessarily have that read of it. They read the breakup story part of it, because that's the stuff Ari Aster's talking about in interviews, and that's the stuff that's very easy to point out. But they're not sort of getting the sort of cultural message of it, to the point where people are thinking like the Harga are pretending to be empathetic when they're not, when Florence Pugh's character is screaming on the floor there. But I really liked it from viewing it on that standpoint, that this is a horror movie where the people you go in thinking are the horror villains are not the villains. Yeah, there's some... They're using some surreptitiousness to them, they're doing some other bad stuff, but they're not... you know, as long as you respect their culture and everything, it doesn't seem like they kill you. So, the British couple that comes along, maybe there's a little something to be said there, but otherwise, the movie doesn't treat them like the villains. So, but yeah, for a movie that is almost all in broad daylight, a movie that technically tells you everything that happens in the opening shot with that mural, this was just a very sort of trying emotional experience as well. Maybe not as trying as Marriage Story, but this is sort of what goes into like the elevated horror genre that's going around now, or the artistic horror genre, where this is sort of critically enjoyed horror. And when I watched this movie, I was like, yeah, I really wish there were more horror movies like this, maybe a little bit less of like the generic Blumhouse stuff, and a bit more like this. And supposedly Ari Aster's next movie is not going to be horror, which is going to be a shame. I wish he could almost kind of stay in the genre, but I understand he doesn't want to be typecast. But I really, really enjoyed this. I didn't get a chance to see the director's cut, because Alamo did show the director's cut for a week, late in the summer, around like Labor Day, but I just didn't get a chance. And now I think the director's cut is only if you have like Apple's streaming service, and fuck that shit. I want a physical Blu-ray copy of it. I don't know, maybe they'll release some Criterion or something, but yeah, loved Midsommar. Number 2, Parasite. Bong Joon-ho? Sorry, I always forget these names. It took me forever to learn Park Chan-wook when I loved Oldboy so much many years ago. So Parasite is probably the biggest economic inequality movie that came out this year, and that's definitely not a theme that is silent from movies these days. What I liked about Parasite is that the marketing did not necessarily tell you what the movie was about beyond the first act. You didn't know if it was horror, you didn't know if it was thriller, you just kind of knew it was about these people pretending to be like tutors for this rich family. So what I loved about this movie is that the actual story was still pretty secret for me going in, and maybe that's more to the marketing campaign from Neon than it was to the film itself. But this movie's also very funny, but also very dark, and you don't see the true satire of this movie almost until halfway, because at first it's just about this family trying to ingratiate itself as being all of the servants of this rich family and sort of glomping on. So you think, oh, well, what, the poor are the parasites to the richer family? But then at the halfway point, there's that twist where you figure out what's going on, and then you realize, oh, there's even more levels to this here. But this was, aside from being highly enjoyable, well shot, like the house being its own character and everything, and it's interesting that this movie from South Korea ended up doing a better job than any American film I saw this year with showing sort of class structure and economic inequality and almost class warfare as well. There was a great interview with the director in front of the movie in Alamo where he's like, I thought I was making a movie specifically about South Korea, but in truth we all live in the same country called capitalism. And I'm like, yeah, this is definitely a movie for me. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, the same director also made Snowpiercer, which was also a metaphor for economic inequality and capitalism in general. So, I mean, if he keeps following these same themes, because I saw The Host. I wasn't a big fan of The Host. I haven't seen his Netflix movie, that Okja, whatever it's called. So I haven't seen many of this director's films. I've really only seen Snowpiercer and The Host before this. But if these are the themes he continues to want to explore, then I certainly am on board for anything else he wants to throw at us, because I highly, highly enjoyed it. This was an excellent film. Number 1 movie of 2019 is probably a movie most of you have not seen. I think it's on Hulu right now, though. It's called The Art of SelfDefense. So why did I love this movie so much? So, my favorite movie, not the best movie ever made, but my favorite movie is Fight Club, as many people know who watch the show. Now, I feel that movie was sort of attacking two different things. It was attacking capitalism and consumerism, and then it was also attacking toxic masculinity. So, in the years since, we got the TV show Mr. Robot, and that solely just focused on like the economic stuff, as well as the mental illness stuff. Until it crapped out in the 4th season. I did not like the 4th season of Mr. Robot, but for 3 of the 4 seasons, that was one of the best shows on television. 4th season, I think they just wanted to move on to other projects and kind of got lazy. So they took on that. So The Art of Self-Defense is basically if Fight Club was only about the toxic masculinity stuff. It's very Office Spacey and stuff. And so this is a comedy about a guy. He's a bit of a wuss, works in an office job. One night, coming home from trying to get dog food, he's assaulted, and then he wants to try to take his masculinity back by joining this karate school. And this movie's fucking hilarious. I saw this movie at like 11 o'clock at night in a theater all to myself at Alamo because it was like the last they were going to have it, and I didn't get to see it the previous 2 weeks it was playing. But this movie takes place in not our reality. It takes place in a world where people speak in these weird, like, quiet, staid, tonal inflections. It's odd. It takes place in a universe that's just, like, off-kilter from ours. but I cannot express how this is the driest comedy I've ever seen. This is dry and dark and everything my sense of humor loves, while also making these very cogent points about like toxic masculinity and like incel culture and that kind of stuff. Imogen Poots is in it. She's very good. Jesse Eisenberg is the main actor in it. It's hard for me to explain why this movie is so good without like spoiling jokes or things that happen in it. So I'll just say that it does get very violent, while still staying dry as hell. And this was the funniest movie I saw, but this was also out of a very strong year of very strong movies, many of which are getting Oscar nominations, many of which are on everyone else's list. You know, of my list of my top films this year, there's not many things on there that aren't on other people's lists, here or there. This is probably the only movie that's not on a lot because not a lot of people saw it. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it only got releases at Alamos. I'm actually not sure if it got a wide release outside of those. But this was a movie that I saw and it stuck with me. Like, I went to go see it alone. I laughed my ass off in an empty theater, and this was the movie that, every now and then there's like a movie that comes along that no one else is on board for, and you have to tell people you have to see this in the hopes that it becomes a cult classic. Like, I remember Office Space, which is kind of similar to this movie, but not nearly as dark or as dry. I went to go see that movie opening night, and it bombed because the previews for it sucked, because Mike Judge's humor doesn't translate to trailers very well. And then it was so great, like a year, 2 years later, when it became a cult classic, and now it's, hey girl, and now it's sort of universally recognized as a great comedy. And I guess something similar kind of happened to Fight Club too, where Fight Club bombed and became a cult classic. And I'm kind of hoping this one does too. Like, my favorite movie of last year was Sorry to Bother You. That also was ignored by Oscar, even though there was some talk that maybe it would get it. Still hasn't picked up as the cult classic I hope it would be, but, you know. Hey girl, it's been meowing this whole video. So that didn't pick up to be the cult classic I hope it would be, but I guess there's still time. This is another one of those, where I really hope that people discover this film through streaming or Redbox or whatever, and that it gets the fan base it deserves, because this was a fucking awesome, hilarious movie. So much so that even more than, Irishman or Parasite or all these other well-acclaimed movies, I'm calling this one my favorite of the year, because this was just so good. That's my 2019, so if you've seen or not seen any of these movies, feel free to leave your comments below about them. I'm very busy these days, so I don't have a lot of time to make videos all that often, because I know there's still a bunch of shit I have in my cabinets I gotta try. I'd like to get back to doing Dave's faves and other movie reviews and stuff like that. I don't know, if I have more time down the road, I'll try to sprinkle them through, but I at least want to try and get this video out, because I do this every year or so. But thanks for sticking along for this very long, boring video, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.